fiddler on the roof. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But here in our little city of Buffalo, you could say that every one of us is a fiddler on the roof. Each one of us scratching out a perfect little melody of their own existence. But it's dangerous. Not that easy. You might ask yourself, why do we stay here? Because we are from Buffalo. And how do we keep this balance? Well, I can tell you, it comes up with one word. Tradition! 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 So, I asked myself, when I was asked to come speak this morning, what is it about tradition that is so important? More importantly, why would you ask me? Well, hopefully we'll get to the bottom of this morning. Now I get my clicker. There we go. So, I asked myself this very question, why would I be asked about tradition? But then I said, well, why, who are we that, as a society, that traditions are important? And what are these traditions? What is it that they do for us? And I had this little thought. And I'll just leave you with this word, a smaller place. So why me? Who am I? My name is Myron Deputat, and in Buffalo I'm just a small, like a fiddler, a local musician, scratching out a little existence, playing music, and then having to work it during the day because most musicians in Buffalo have to do that just to be able to create their art. And I have a small little band that I've played with now since 1998 called Those Idiots. So it was a funny story. In 1998, we sat down in the basement of my friend Joe, and we came up with names. We picked a bunch out of a hat, and everyone liked Those Idiots. And we said, sure, let's go with it. We never thought it would last 20 years and it would stick, but it did. At that time, we were just a little rock and roll band. But in 2001, we were asked to come play this event in Buffalo known as Dingus Day. And I showed up, I looked at my friends and I said, guys, we can't start with rock and roll music. I know they hired us to keep the young people around, but I just saw all these older Polish ladies doing this when they saw us. And just so happens, earlier that year, my kid brother and I were trying to form a Ukrainian wedding band, polka band. And that's my heritage, is Ukrainian. And on February 9th, February 10th, he, along with my best friend, passed away in a car accident. And just so happens I wasn't with them because I was on stage performing with my band, Those Idiots. And for some reason, in the back of my car, that fateful day of our first Dingus Day performance, I had the book of charts for all these polkas. So I told the guys, hold on a second. You're not going to believe this. I have a book of polkas. Give me 10 minutes. I'm going to go down and see Father Marion over at St. Nick's on Olga Street and make some copies for you. I'm calling an audible. They're like, okay. So I rushed down because we were playing at the Adam Mickiewicz Library on the east side. Quickly told the Father Marion, Father, I need copies of these polkas. Anything you want. It was late at night, but he opened up his door, made the copies, came back. The guys looked at it. Now my cousin, who was a drummer, knew how to play the polkas. He was going to play in the polka band. So that made it easy. But the other guys were great musicians, and they said, all right. So we show up wearing kind of crazy Devo-like outfits. And everyone is doing this. And we started playing polkas. The crowd went nuts. And we ran out of polkas. So in a moment I said, I want to be sedated polka style. And we started playing this rock and roll song as a polka. All the kids went nuts. So we played every song that we had the rest of that set as a polka. Well, year after year, the crowd started to grow. Eventually, these are the kinds of crowds we started playing for. And we realized that we were instrumental in being part of this revival of this wonderful neighborhood and this wonderful tradition that was happening here in Buffalo. That really is something special because it's not often you get to say, yeah, you're part of something that is historic. And really it's a historic revival of the east side of Buffalo, the old Polonia district. So if you're curious about what Dingus Day is and why it's so important in Buffalo, I've got a little video for you.
Buffalo, New York, the Dingus Day capital of the world.
So I guess that's why I'm qualified to talk about tradition. Maybe. But the next question always is, who are we? Who are we as people? And if you look around the world, we come from all over. And Edward O. Wilson had written, and one of his quotes in a recent Newsweek article was, humans, like ants, need a tribe. The question is, are humans tribal in nature? Well, I was reading up on this, and there's a project called the Be Human Project, which works on trying to make businesses more human. And there are all kinds of interesting articles about what it means to be human. And Steve Knight, back in 2014, wrote about how this tribal nature that we have was actually part of survival. It helped give us identity and cohesiveness within groups. And he drew upon the works of McPherson, Smith, Lovin, and Cook, who wrote a paper on birds of a feather, homophily in the social networks. Now, that's a That was a new word for me. What is homophilia? It means love of the same. And what they found in their studies was that we as human beings actually enjoy and love the same things. And when we're in a group with our social networks, we tend to be homogenous. That's why, especially you see it with young kids. They'll all start wearing the same kind of clothes. They'll all start talking the same way. And it's actually this part of human nature which actually helps in creating our identity and making us able to be cohesive in our groups so that we as a species can survive. It's this love of the same that brings us together. But there's a caveat. In the chapter Psychology of the Tribe, Bill Bishop, in his book The Big Short, said that there's a tendency when you have these groups, no matter whether the views are true or not, there can be a reinforcement of extreme views. In primitive tribes, you see this with their beliefs that are unwavering. But today, unfortunately, these groups feed upon themselves. And we get something akin to the group mind, which can be led astray. And instead of opening our borders, we isolate ourselves and don't accept what others have to show and who they are. So then why are traditions important? And what are traditions? Well, Webster's has a definition for everything in our world, but at least in the English language, they say traditions are an inherited, established, customary pattern of thought or action or behavior, such as a religious practice or a social custom, rituals, going to church, celebrations. They're also a belief in a story or a body of beliefs or stories relating to the past that are commonly accepted as historical, but not necessarily verifiable. Traditions are the handing down of information, beliefs and customs by word of mouth from one generation to the next. They give a cultural continuity in social attitudes, customs, and institutions. And they also display different characteristics and styles in the way that we dress and we look and we act. And why is that important? Because these traditions give us a sense of identity. And identity is what helps us define our tribe. And that's what makes us feel good and gives us the strength to survive. And when somebody learns their tribe's traditions, they are given that sense of belonging. They know where they come from. But as we create new traditions, we create new tribes. So, how do we make, what is this idea of a smaller place? Well, I had this thought. What we really need to do is share our traditions. Because by sharing our traditions, we can prevent these unshakable extreme views of people because we get to know each other. We all get a greater sense of understanding of who we are and who our neighbors are. And instead of living in fear, we're able to accept them and even adopt some of their traditions as our own. So my simple message or thought for you today: from this little polka band guy who happens to be involved with a big tradition now in Buffalo, is that remember, yes, it's good to be part of a group, part of an organization, part of a tribe. And it's good to know who we are and celebrate our own personal traditions, but we should share these traditions. And my task for every one of you today is to go out this holiday season and share one of your traditions, be they a personal family tradition or one of your cultural traditions, with someone else close to you. And you will get a greater understanding of who they are and they of you. And if we slowly start spreading this and accepting the cultures and the traditions of all, we will make the world a smaller place. And hopefully, through a smaller place, we'll all live in a wonderful, peaceful, harmonious world. Thank you.